Hi. Great.
Excellent.
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you very much, Dimitri, for inviting me here. I really appreciate you putting this on. I hope that what I'm going to say is useful and supportive to the Belarus tech industry. I want to just start off by saying that it's a great initiative to do this to support people there, and I've been a visitor several times, so it's a privilege for me to be here today. Since the presidential election that took place on the 9th of August, Belarus has been living through one of the best and the worst periods in its history. The worst because of the terrible crackdown on its people and on peaceful protests against the unjust, unfair and rigged results. But also it's the best of times because we've seen and witnessed how, in our own eyes, how desirous of justice and real democracy the people of Belarus are. As we all know, it needn't have been this way. Belarusians are an incredible people. They are talented, educated, and on my many trips to Minsk, I found out that they were bursting with life, energy, and enthusiasm for their country, and also, of course, for the tech industry. My own journey towards understanding Belarus began a few years ago when I was invited by the amazing Tanya Marinich, founder and of I'm a Guru and Tech Minsk, and also Venture Day Minsk. Tanya deserves enormous praise, both for her highlighting of the tech industry in Belarus and for her own personal sacrifice. Her husband, Mikhail Marinich, was a public figure. He was a minister and an ambassador who once openly disagreed with the regime, resigned from his position and participated in presidential elections against the current president, just as we are witnessing today, this year. He was then imprisoned and got a stroke in jail. Almost 6 years ago, he passed away. So it's for her struggle and for his sacrifice that I am dedicating my speech today. It was through Tanya and also the many Belarus entrepreneurs and founders that I've met that I have realized the huge potential in this country. And it's not just me. The story of technology in Belarus has been spectacularly successful given the difficult circumstances that we all know that country has. In 2013, Tech Minsk was established as an acceleration program for startups with the support of the US Agency for International Development at the I'm a Guru Startup Hub. In 2019, Tech Minsk raised an acceleration fund in partnership with Google Launchpad. Minsk that is just one example of many initiatives in Belarus and in Minsk. And of course, we know that Minsk is a cultural and scientific hub of Belarus and includes many startup education programs, events, and even co-working spaces. And as we know, some fantastic startups have emerged from Belarus in the last few years. Viber, Miscord, Wargaming, PandaDoc, and many more. Among the most significant regular events, of course, is Venture Day Minsk and the Emerge Technology Conference. And of course, we all know that this has helped support the industry there. And we're also familiar with the High Tech Park, which is a special economic zone of Belarus, and also semi-publicly owned the technology, the fact that how much the technology industry contributes to Belarus today. By some estimates, it amounts to something over 5% of GDP. That's roughly the export volume per capita in Belarus amounts to roughly $108. That's per person. That is the same volume. So the same volume in the United States is $58. In India, it is $40, and in China, it is $20. In other words, per capita, per person, Belarus technology industry is contributing vast amounts to the country and to the prosperity of its people. And that's why the history of the technology industry and of the Belarusian people are so intertwined. We know that the talent there is there. 3,000 programmers come into the ecosystem every year from universities. The sector, but also we know that the technology industry has helped the rise of the pro-democracy movement in Belarus. Golos was an alternative voting platform used during the elections, with 1.5 million users, helped millions of Belarusians understand the scale of the election falsification. And we also know, unfortunately, that many of the successful technology companies are now very, very deeply concerned. EPAM, Wargaming, Viber, Miscord, and others have established offices outside, and many have moved people away because of the recent problems and the terrible events of the last few months. Indeed, also PandaDoc raised money to help police officers to lay down their arms. We've seen violence against both the Belarusian people and also specifically against technology companies as well, which is an absolute scandal and an international crime. 2,500 technology employees, including hundreds of founders, CEOs, investors, have signed an open letter to the Belarusian government calling on them to reinstate the free and fair elections, or risk erasing all of the achievements of the technology industry, which, as I said, really is the driving force, very much so, behind so much of business now in Belarus. We've got to face the issue that if Lukashenko stays in power, companies will move, the talent will move. You can't build a business in a concentration camp. You can't build a business when you're under the boot, the jackboot of the police or the army. Engineers and technologists work hard, they pay taxes, they want to lift up their country, but they are also global people now. And we don't want to see Belarus lose its technology industry. I certainly don't, and I'm sure you don't want to either. And I just want to say that on behalf of those of us who are, I can't speak for Techcrunch, but certainly personally, I would say that we are here to support technologists in Belarus and help them reinstate free elections, and we are wholly supportive of the democratic movement there. And if there are any questions, I'm here to take questions. Dimitri, would you like to?
Yes, Mike, thank you so much.
Have a conversation.
It was a very, very touching speech, and thank you for your belief and support in Belarus. I am exactly the same opinion myself, even though I'm right now in Finland. And a lot of people from all over the world showing their support, and I think that's what the community needs. One question I do have to you, as I think I'm going to ask pretty much everyone, what do you think that the tech founders and also just people working in tech can do right now? What are the things for them to look out for, and how can they take action, and what kind of action do you think is reasonable to take at the moment?
Do you mean in terms of what technology people can do?
Right, yes, exactly.
Well, I think that, first of all, of course, Western technology companies are certainly supportive of technology companies in Belarus. I think that, we've seen, of course, that Telegram has been used extensively throughout this period, and we know that that's been of huge use there. I think, to be honest, I think there could be more public support, and I think that it's certainly something I'll be watching as I do my work for Techcrunch on a daily basis, to see whether or not larger technology companies, certainly on the diplomatic front, the UK government has actually called for free and fair elections and has put sanctions on the leadership of Belarus, of the regime, or certain individuals, of course, certainly the current president and his coterie of people. But obviously it is a difficult time right now, because we've just had the US elections, we've just had, we were obviously still in the COVID-19 pandemic. So it is very difficult, of course, to keep making sure that the world will pay attention to this issue. But I'm confident that that when the time comes, that certainly I'm absolutely sure that the vast majority, everyone in the Western Europe, certainly here in the UK, we're very much supportive of the pro-democracy movement and of the opposition.
Thank you, Mike. Another question that I have for you, but before I do that, I would like to encourage everyone from the participants to ask questions. You can ask questions in Russian, and I can translate them as well. So if you have any questions, just drop them into the Q&A, and we will be answering them with Mike during the call, and then maybe even after in text as well. I mean, one thing that I found fascinating in your talk is, you bring up the numbers that per capita, Belarus is doing extremely well. And that was a fascinating piece of information to really have at your disposal, right? And I'm wondering, now that you've been to Belarus a number of times, what do you think contributes to that? What qualities does Belarus actually possess, or the founders that you see, how are they different from the founders you meet, say in the UK, that makes sure that this number is actually in place?
Well, I think one thing that's worth saying is that that probably the emphasis on engineering and science is still hugely prevalent. You've got to remember that the Belarus education system is still hugely engineering and science oriented, and I think that's probably part of the reason why the technology industry has flourished so much there in the last years. And I think also somehow in the last few years, it became possible for US tech giants like Facebook and others to become aware of the talent there and the startups that were able to come out of the country and interface with them. And of course, that meant that you had exits, you had real exits. Now, this the real shame of what's going on right now is that if the elections had been free and fair, if the current president had stepped down, taken the right decision, stepped down, Belarus business, Belarus technology industry would be in a fantastic position to take advantage of all the growth that's happened over the last few years, be able to reform its business laws and its civil society, of course, as well. And we would be looking at an entirely different scenario, totally different. But because, of course, what's going on, this is putting in jeopardy all of the work that's happened over the last few years. And that's why it's such a shame and such a tragedy that this is playing out. But we shouldn't be downhearted. Every day in Western media, and certainly in the UK, I see the protests on the streets of Minsk in particular. I'm aware of what's going on there. I have obviously friends and contacts in the country, and we are also seeing when there are significant events, of course, that breaks through to our mainstream news and newspapers here in the UK, and of course across the world. So the important thing is to keep going, keep pushing, know that the rest of the world is behind you, and keep the faith, as it were.
Thank you, Mike, so much. There's also a question from Igor right now. And the question is, given that there is a lot of crises in the world right now, and within crises, there are always opportunities. What opportunities do you think lie in front of the Belarusian founders?
What are some of the opportunities? Well, the world, of course, we've just lived through an incredible period of history. The pandemic has changed society. 2020 will go down really as a seminal event in human history. And then what was projected to be the next 10 years of digitization has really been shrunk into 6 months, if that. 10 years. If you think of the innovations that happened during World War II, we went in 5 years from having propeller biplanes to jet aircraft in 5 years. And what's happening now is that the whole world has become a remote world, remote virtual working, huge amounts of digitization. And so that huge mega trend means that the world is now really the playground of the technology industry. It means that every human aspect of existence for human beings will now be digitized, and has been, and huge amounts of it have been already. And that means, therefore, that all of the big trends that we've seen happen in the last few years, such as AI, data science, biotech, health tech, that just also shrunk into 10 years of that development, also just shrunk in virtually into the last 6 months. So there are going to be huge opportunities in the next few years. And so eventually, when the pandemic is over, and we know that vaccines and drugs are being developed right now, and it's looking more optimistic even just this week than it was compared to a couple of weeks or months ago, that when the pandemic is over, the behaviors that we've become used to, such as, doing calls over video, and the behaviors of how we build companies or create things, will still be with us. And of course, we'll all be, everyone will be absolutely overjoyed when we can get out and, hug each other again and live normally again. Of course, that will happen. But of course, many of the behaviors that we learned during this pandemic will still be with us. And actually, we'll also find that maybe it's not such a bad thing. We don't have to go into the office every day. We don't have to do all of the meetings in person, etc. So that will hopefully improve life, improve the environment, which is another huge issue that we must address over the next few years. And so that digitization has shrunk everything. And so everything that you knew of before, well, it just sped up.